What's up, you guys? Tyler Huxford here, and for today's video, we are going to do an update on the 40-gallon innovative marine tank which sits in my living room. Now, today's video is not intended to be a showcase or even a humble brag. This video is actually intended to hold us to some extreme accountability. And the reason I say that is because just 6 months ago, this tank looked like this, a booming, busting reef tank full of color and flow. But over the course of 6 months, several things got out of hand, and now the result is this. So in this video, we're going to talk through some of the things that went wrong, so why I went from a thriving reef tank to the result you see here. But we're also going to be positive and talk about moving forward what the plan will be for this tank. Since we did take a few steps back as far as coral growth is concerned, it just means we've got a little bit of an open canvas here to start over and hopefully grow some corals that we like. So that's what we'll do in today's video. As we get started, might be good to just talk a little bit about the equipment that we have in this tank. So that was kind of problem number one. So what I originally used to grow all of these corals were two blue lights, namely a Kessel A360X as well as an AI Prime. And I used those two lights, and that was what grew the majority of the corals when the coral was thriving. And then I replaced those two lights with a Radion Gen 4. The problem is, Radion Gen 4s, you can't adjust the color on with the Ecotech app, and so the Mobius app rather. And so I was stuck with a very bright white light that I couldn't actually adjust unless I manually came down and adjusted it, and you can't really play with the settings. And so I fried my corals, and they were slowly starting to decline. I really wanted to like that light, but just couldn't. So what I resorted back to here are two Red Sea 90 Maxes, which I swore I'd never go back to. But honestly, these lights are just so aesthetic and pleasing, and the blue lights grow some really great corals, especially if you're looking to grow LPS, Zoas. You can grow some really beautiful corals underneath these lights, and this time around, the Red Sea lights sync really well with my Wi-Fi. Well, actually, one of them does. The other one does not. For some reason, I have to manually come down and unplug and plug that one in every time. But it does mean that when I go on vacation, I've got at least one light working, and that's enough to grow corals. So I do recommend the Red Sea lights. I swore I never would, but honestly, they have done a fantastic job. Believe it or not, the tank used to look worse than this, and we're already starting on the up and up. Now, the biggest reason that this tank took so many steps back is because I recently found out that my RODI filter needed not only a resin change, but a membrane change, and I had not made that change. And so I tested my water the other day after changing out the resin, and I'm so glad I did, because if I wouldn't have tested the water, I just would have kept pumping in, the RODI water I was getting from my system. What I found out after checking that was that my parts per million on the TPS meter, as far as metals go in the water, was just way too high. I mean, I'm talking close to 30 parts per million, which means I was essentially introducing tap water to my tank every time I was doing water changes or even just topping off, and that slowly accumulated to a huge problem. That was part of the reason why I was growing some really pesky macroalgae. It's part of the reason that corals were dying off. I should have just known, because I have just had so much algae on my tank. I've actually lost some invertebrates. That was completely my fault, but we have changed the membrane. We have changed the resin. We're going to introduce pure water from now on. So moving forward, here's the plan for the tank. So here's a snapshot of the top of the tank. So you'll see that Holy Grail torch there hanging in like a champion, which I really appreciate, because honestly, like, torches sometimes are the first thing to go. You'll also notice that what used to be just full of red cap monopora is on that left-hand side is like officially bare, which is great. I've got a few pieces of red cap monopora, just a few small pieces, which I've kind of learned from because those grow so stinking fast. But then what I've put are pieces of digifrags. I've put some yellow goldenrod acro here. It's given me the opportunity to put an orange lepto right there in the middle. I've also got one of those lime green monoporas up at the top left. And then I've got some Fruit Loop zoas, which have hung in there. So this essentially gives me a really nice open canvas. And what I plan to do is introduce some really brightly colored entry-level acros, acros that can survive in an environment where I'm really going to be focusing on the LPS corals. I don't want high alkalinity, of 11. I want alkalinity closer to like 8.59. So I'll just put in the acros that allow me to do that. I'll put in some colorful monoporas and then just fill this thing to the brim with LPS. That being said, we'll just move a little bit lower here. So the LPS is struggling just a little bit, and the main reason is those two clownfish there. That's kind of a lesson I'm learning in the reefing hobby, is that if you really want LPS to grow in a tank this size, probably best not to get two clownfish unless you've got an anemone somewhere. And then you got to worry about the anemone stinging things if you have the anemone. If you don't have the anemone, then your clownfish are just going to rub up against your frog spawns, your hammers, your torches like crazy. So I've got some frog spawns there in the middle. The green one with the purple eyes at the end. I've even got a turquoise frog spawn there. Those are still hanging in there tough. And then I've got some hammer up at the top right. Down at the bottom left, you'll see that I've got a frammer, kind of that hybrid frog spawn hammer. And then I've got one of the things I really like is just right there in the middle, that OG bounce mushroom, which honestly just looks so good, and it continues to grow. I've got the bubble coral, which is mad in this video. He's usually doing just fine, but he is a little bit mad, probably because I cleaned the glass up a little bit. And then I've got some orange oxides as well as some rostozoas just growing there. So the plan moving forward is just to really fill this spot, this middle tier spot, full of LPS coral. So I'll be putting all kinds of hammers in here. I've actually already bought, before making this video, another Holy Grail torch, which I put right next to that frammer there in the bottom left, which already looks so good. My goal here is to fill this spot with LPS corals. I really like LPS corals. They're the most colorful corals. They move a lot. That's what I'm going to be doing there. We're also going to go heavy on the zoas here. So any spots that aren't full from LPS, we'll go with zoas. Only the most colorful zoas, if you know me. All right, moving on, let's talk about this. So the bottom left part of the tank. This is where my prized Zoa garden used to live, and it's almost gone, folks. It's really sad. But, another opportunity here to kind of work with a blank canvas. I did learn some things in the process of growing that beautiful Zoa garden. One of them is that just like no two Zoas are alike, they don't all grow at the same pace. The other thing I learned is Zoas especially can hide really pesky pests as well as just corals you don't want. So you probably can't see it just from this video. We'll use a better camera for the next video, but this rock is covered in black cloves. And the way I introduced those black cloves, not black crows. Isn't that a band or something? Anyways, the reason I introduced these black cloves was because I had some black cloves on a frag of Zoas that I put in the tank, and black cloves are like a lot of the corals you don't want. Like the green polyps, the green star polyps, the zinnias, they grow like crazy and they can absolutely take over your corals. So make sure not to introduce black clove polyps, because if you do, it's really hard to get rid of. It's just a super resilient coral. Odds are, if you're doing what it takes to kill black clove polyps, then you're probably killing off a lot of things in your tank. But what this gave me was a new blank canvas to work with. So I have put the Super Zanzoas up front. I've put the Rostozoas in the front on the other side, and I put the purple heart zoas in the front. And then I've got some orange oxides in the back. What I learned from my first Zoa garden is that you can't really see top down into this zoa garden, so the zoas you want, you should put in the front so that you can see it while you're sitting down watching the TV. So that's what I did. I put the most beautiful zoas in the front. We'll probably add, and the other thing is I'm not going to add like 10 species of zoas on one rock because then they just grow together so fast. I'm probably going to pick 5 to 6 favorites, and I'm already at 5 between the orange oxides, the purple heart zoas, the super xan zoas, the rastas. Actually, that's 4. So I've got space for 2 more, and we're going to call it good. Already know that I want some green emerald zoas. The next choice, maybe the blue boo berries. Don't have any blue on here. That's the plan for this rock, and it's going to look nice. Moving over to this right-hand side. So this is the rock that just got completely out of hand. So there was this macroalgae that was just growing all over it. What I've done is I've introduced a blue tuxedo urchin. I found that those things just eat the macroalgae so well, and already it's looking much better than you see in this clip here. What I also got, though, was a Holy Grail Micromusa. You see that thing just growing there like a champ. Can't wait for that guy to take over. Also, the Hollywood Stunner that was here died, and I'm thankful for that and I probably won't ever put Hollywood Stunner in a tank again, to be honest, unless it's just on a rock completely isolated. I also put the Super Xan zoas up to the top right. Hope that those can continue growing. That Toxic Hammer up there just looks so good. And then we've got that Lepto right next to the Bounce Mushroom there. Purple with green polyps. Looks really good with some purple heart zoas right next to it. Probably need to change that out. That's too much purple and green, just really close. And then you've got the pink Chalice up there at the top. That doesn't grow quite as fast as the Hollywood Stunner. This is heartbreaking. So I'm down to just a War Paint Scully because my green apple Zoe died. And the reason it died was because I was pouring kind of mayonnaise thick kalkwasser on the black clove polyps, and it landed in the green apple Scully. So ultimately it died. It was pretty sad. Here's just a close-up of the zoas again. Kind of talked through the plan through that already. Just 5 to 6 favorites, which I'll put on this rock, let them grow, and put the favorites in the front. I really like those Super Saiyans. They just light up the tank. It's really nice. So this side of the tank, like I said, probably going to fill this up with LPS corals. So going really heavy on the hammers and the frog spawns, hopefully also by just introducing tons of LPS. Not only do we have a colorful tank, but hopefully that will also promote some growth here. It'll give more than just a few corals for the clownfish to bother, so that no single one of them is just getting way too much love and affection from the clownfish. That's one of the things I'm hoping for. But yeah, I'm going to fill this side with zoas and LPS, and then obviously working on eliminating all of the barnacles and all of the macroalgae. So that's it for today's video. That's kind of the update for this tank as well as the direction I'm headed. So once again, folks, check that RODI system. Make sure that the water you're topping off with is as close to 0 on the TPS meter as possible. Make sure that you find some lights that work, and then think twice before changing it ever. If you find something that works, just go with it. I kind of had to change it out because the AI Prime bulb was dying. And then lastly, I mean, really dip your corals. Like, don't introduce the macroalgae, don't introduce the barnacles, the black polyps. That's what I did, and I'm paying for it, but I commit myself to within 6 months making this a great tank again. Thanks for tuning in, folks.